Hi everybody. Well, we're reading another chapter, I think actually two chapters this time, of Grandfather Frog. First, hello to Jackson, Matthew, Marjorie, and Emma, all here in Maine. Malia and Lucas in Missouri. Kaiming and Rukai in Washington State. Hope here in Maine. Dylan in Maine. And Lucas in Maine. Leslie and Mary across the North Atlantic over in England. Ezzy and Indy in Oklahoma. Kayla here in Maine. Sylvia, Macy, and Lillian here in Maine. Harper in Maine. Caden and Xander in Maine. Hi, boys. And Evangeline and Isaac in Rhode Island. Okay, now, I have to write them down so we won't miss anybody. Now, let's see. Remember, we're in the Adventures of Grandfather Frog. And there's Grandfather Frog on his big green lily pad in the Smiling Pool. So let's see what happens. Chapter 2. Longlegs the Heron. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed a word there, guys. Longlegs the Blue Heron receives callers. In other words, somebody came to see him. Longlegs the Blue Heron felt decidedly out of sorts. It was a beautiful morning, too beautiful for anyone to be feeling that way. Indeed, it was the same beautiful morning in which Grandfather Frog had caught so many foolish green flies and eaten them. Jolly, round, bright Mr. Sun was smiling his broadest. The merry little breezes of old Mother West Wind were dancing happily here and there over the green meadows, looking for some good turn to do for others. The little feathered people, in other words, birds, to whom old Mother Nature had given the great blessing of music in their throats, were pouring out their sweetest songs. So it seemed as if there was no good reason why Longlegs should feel out of sorts. The fact is, the trouble with Longlegs was an empty stomach. Yes, sir, that is what ailed Longlegs the Blue Heron that sunshiny morning. You know it is hard work to be hungry and happy at the same time. So Longlegs stood on the edge of a shallow little pool in the Laughing Brook, grumbling to himself. Just a little while before, he had seen Little Joe Otter carrying home a big fish, and this had made him hungrier and more out of sorts than ever. In the first place, it made him envious, and envy, you know, always stirs up bad feelings. He knew perfectly well that Little Joe had got that fish by boldly chasing it until he caught it, for Little Joe can swim even faster than a fish. But Longlegs chose to try to make himself think it was all luck. Moreover, he wanted to blame someone for his own lack of success, as most people who fail do. So when Little Joe had called out, "Hi, Longlegs, what luck this fine morning?" Longlegs just pretended not to hear. But when Little Joe was out of sight and hearing, he began to grumble to himself. "No wonder I have no luck with that fellow racing up and down the Laughing Brook," said he. "He isn't content to catch what he wants himself, but frightens the rest of the fish so that an honest fisherman like me has no chance at all. I don't see what old Mother Nature was thinking of when she gave him a liking for fish. He and Billy Mink are just two worthless little scamps, born to make trouble for other people." He was still grumbling when those two same little scamps poked their heads out of the grass on the other side of the little pool. "You look happy, Longlegs. Must be you have had a good breakfast," said Little Joe, nudging Billy Mink. Longlegs snapped his great bill angrily. "What are you doing here, spoiling my fishing?" he demanded. "Haven't you got the big river and all the rest of the Laughing Brook to fool around in? This is my pool, and I'll thank you to keep away." Now that's what's happening right then. Joe Otter and Billy Mink are over on the other side of the Smiling Pool, and there's Longlegs the Heron, the Blue Heron. Well, did everybody see that all right? Okay, that's better maybe, huh? Okay. Now, where was I? Billy Mink chuckled so that Longlegs heard him, and that didn't improve his temper a bit. But before he could say anything more, Little Joe Otter spoke. "Oh," said he, "we beg your pardon. We just happen to know that Grandfather Frog is sound asleep. We thought that if you hadn't had good luck this morning, you might like to know about it. As long as you think so ill of us, we'll just run over to tell Blackcap the Night Heron." Little Joe turned as if to start off in search of Blackcap at once. "Hold on a minute," called Longlegs, and tried to make his voice sound pleasant, a difficult thing to do because you know his voice is very harsh and disagreeable. The truth is, I haven't had a mouthful of breakfast, and to be hungry is apt to make me cross. What did you say Grandfather Frog is? I didn't say, replied Little Joe, but if you really want to know, he is sitting on his big green lily pad in the Smiling Pool, fast asleep right in plain sight. Thank you, said Longlegs. I believe I have an errand up that way. Now I think of it, I believe I'll just go over and have a look at him. I have never seen him asleep. That's the end of chapter 2. And now we'll keep our arm going if everyone's ready and read chapter 3. Longlegs visits the Smiling Pool. Longlegs the Blue Heron watched Billy Mink and Little Joe Otter disappear down the Laughing Brook. As long as they were in sight, he sat without moving, his head drawn down beneath his shoulders, just as if he had nothing more important to think about than a morning nap. But if you had been near enough to have seen his keen eyes, you would never have suspected him of even thinking of a nap. Just as soon as he felt that the two little brown-coated scamps were out of sight, he stretched his long neck up until he was almost twice as tall as he had been a minute before. He looked this way and that way to make sure no danger was near, spread his great wings, flapped heavily up into the air, and then, with his head once more tucked back between his shoulders, his long legs straight out behind him, he flew out over the green meadows, making a big circle, headed straight for the Smiling Pool. All this time, Billy Mink and Little Joe Otter had not been so far away as Longlegs supposed. They had been hiding where they could watch him, and the instant he spread his wings, they started back up the Laughing Brook towards the Smiling Pool to see what would happen there. You see, they knew perfectly well that Longlegs was flying up to the Smiling Pool in the hope that he could catch Grandfather Frog for his breakfast. They didn't really mean that any harm should come to Grandfather Frog, but they meant that he should have a great fright. You see, they were like a great many other people, so heedless and thoughtless that they thought it fun to frighten others. Of course we'll waken Grandfather Frog in time for him to get away with nothing more than a great scare, said Little Joe Otter, as they hurried along. It will be fun to see his big goggly eyes pop out when he opens them up and sees Longlegs just ready to gobble him up. And won't Longlegs be hopping mad when we cheat him out of the breakfast he is so sure he is going to have? They reached the Smiling Pool before Longlegs, who had taken a roundabout way, and they hid among the bulrushes where they could see and not be seen. There's the old fellow just as I left him, fast asleep, whispered Billy. Sure enough, there on his big green lily pad sat Grandfather Frog with his eyes shut. At least they seemed to be shut. And over on top of his big house sat Jerry Muskrat. Jerry seemed to be too busy opening a freshwater clam to notice anything else, but the truth is he was watching all that was going on. You see, he had suspected that Billy Mink was going to play some trick on Grandfather Frog, so he had warned him. When he had seen Longlegs coming towards the Smiling Pool, he had given Grandfather Frog another warning. He knew that now he was only pretending to be asleep. Straight up to the Smiling Pool came Longlegs the Blue Heron, and on the very edge of it, among the bulrushes, he dropped his long legs and stood with his toes in the water, his long neck stretched up so he could look all over the Smiling Pool. There, just as Little Joe Otter had said, sat Grandfather Frog on the green lily pad, fast asleep. At least he seemed to be fast asleep. The eyes of Longlegs sparkled with hunger and the thought of what a splendid breakfast Grandfather Frog would make. Very slowly, putting each foot down carefully as he knew how, Longlegs began to walk along the shore, so as to get opposite that big green lily pad where Grandfather Frog was sitting. And over in the bulrushes on the other side, Little Joe Otter and Billy Mink nudged each other and clapped their hands over their mouths to keep from laughing aloud. And that's the end of chapter 3. We'll read the next chapter soon, probably tomorrow. Chapter 4 is entitled, by the way, The Patience of Longlegs the Blue Heron. And we'll see what happens tomorrow. Okay, bye-bye, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it.